Welcome, Rabbi Isai, to Chazara Shiur on Sugya Chaf Aleph. We're doing two sugyas back to back, Sugya Chaf and Chaf Aleph. And let's go straight ahead. Our Mishnah was talking about a case of Balabayas giving fruits to his friend to watch, and it was going rotten. And what was the din in our Mishnah? Tanakama says you shouldn't touch it, and then Gmaliel says you should sell it in front of Beis Din. And the Gemara tries to analyze what's really the deeper reasoning of Tanakama and Gmaliel. And it seems to be that Tanakama hold in general, don't intervene. If there's a problem, if your friend is having a problem, don't intervene. And Gmaliel holds, no, you should intervene, you should get involved, you should help it out, sell it in front of Beis Din. So the Gemara says, one second, let's try to apply these dinim and these ideas, these svaras, these logics, to a similar case. To not even a similar, but let's try to apply it to another case. What's another case? The case is what we're going to be talking about for the next while. And the words in Lashon HaKodesh that we're going to refer to them is, so remember this, mouridin Karav, we bring down a relative, lנכסי, to the belongings of שבוי, of a captive. What's the case? Let's say there's a guy that owns a field, and unfortunately he gets taken hostage, he's taken away, he's taken captive. So now, should Beis Din appoint his relative who is worthy of inheriting him, like his son, someone that's like very close, and someone that like actually has a connection to this field because he might inherit the field? So should Beis Din appoint his son or his relative to manage the field in the meantime? So a field doing nothing is it's a waste of a field. Let this guy go down to the field and let him work the field. So again, this case is mouridin Karav, we bring down a relative, lנכסי שבוי, to the nechassim, to the belongings of this hostage. So now, says the Gemara, let's try to apply the logic of Tanakama and the logic of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel to this case. Let's try to say, the Tanakama says, don't touch it, don't intervene. The Karav should not go down to the field. And Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, you should intervene, you should go down to the field. No, sounds right. And the Gemara pushes that away. The Gemara says, actually no. Why? Because the Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel say their din because of specific reasons that apply only specifically to our Mishnah. What's the reason? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel could tell you that you know why I say that you should sell the fruits? Because the actual fruits, the keren, the principle of the fruits is getting ruined. But over here in the field, the actual field is not really getting ruined. So, I could, by the case of the field, I could say different. I could say, you shouldn't go down to the field, you shouldn't touch it. So unnecessarily does Rabbi Shimon Gamliel hold that you should go down to the field. And Tanakama, they could say that you know why I hold that you shouldn't touch it? I hold that specifically by Peiris. Why? Either like Rav Kana says, or like Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says, either the Shemer shouldn't sell it because the Balabayas wants his own fruits, wants it with Kav Shaloi, or like Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak said, because maybe the Balabayas designated them as Terumah. But over here, those two reasons don't apply to the field. Right? Because the relative is going to go down to the field, actually he's going to enhance Kav Shaloi. It's not a problem. The Shavui is not going to care about Kav Shaloi in this case because there's nothing growing in the field right now. It's sitting there doing nothing. And you can't make the field itself to the Ma'aser. So these reasons don't apply. So Tanakama could say, look, when I hold that you shouldn't touch the peiros, only for these reasons. Either like this or like this, whatever. But in the case of the field, the nechsei shavui, the belongings of the captive, I can hold no. I can hold maybe he should go down. So what did the Gemara just do? The Gemara suggested maybe we could apply the ideas of the Tanakama and Shmuel Gamliel to the case of nechsei shavui. And the Gemara then slugs that up. The Gemara suggests, and then the Gemara slugs it up and says, no, unnecessarily do we apply Tanakama's din to this case, and unnecessarily do we apply Rabbi Shimon Gamliel's din to the case of nechsei shavui, of the belongings of a hostage. And with that we complete Chelek 1 of our Sugya. let's open up our Gemara and let's learn this piece inside. Let's know it well. Read along verbally as we're reading it, the words and the taich, that way your entire body is serving Hashem, all limbs of your body, with all of your kaiches. We're holding about a quarter down from the top of the page. Mid'Rabban Shimon, in some Gemaras the line starts Yechanan, in some Gemaras the line ends Mid'Rabban. Mid'Rabban Shimon ben Gmaliel Nishmah. Zok the Gemara. From Rabbi Shimon ben Gmaliel we're able to learn out, Nishmah we're able to learn out, the moridim Karav, that we bring down a relative, lenכסי שבוי, to the belongings of a hostage, of a captive. Mid'Rabbanan Nishmah, and from Rabbanan we're able to learn out the ein moridim Karav lenכסי שבוי, that we don't intervene, that we don't bring down a relative to the belongings of a captive. Okay, so that's the Gemara's suggestion. Frag the Gemara, and now the Gemara pushes that away. The Gemara slugs it up and says, "Umimai." And from what? Meaning, how do you know this? From where do you know this? From where are you coming to such an assumption? Dilma, maybe. Now it's important to listen to how we read this part of the Gemara. Dilma, maybe. Ad kan, until here. Rabbi Shimon ben Gmaliel does not hold over here that you should sell it. Ella mishum, only because because the actual principle of the avocado, the actual thing is getting destroyed. So again, the way how you would say this over in English is, maybe Rabbi Shimon ben Gmaliel doesn't hold that you should sell it until now, until this case. Only in this case. Only in the case of the paydays does he say you should sell it. Because the keren, the principle, is getting destroyed. Again, let's read that again. Ad Dilma, maybe, ad kan, until here, loy kam, Rabbi Shimon ben Gmaliel hacha. Rabbi Shimon ben Gmaliel does not say over here, ela mishum, only because the kakalikana. Because the keren, the principle of the fruits are getting destroyed. Avol Hasam, but over there, in the case of the nechsei shavui, the belongings of the hostage, hachinami, so also the moridim, that we should not bring that we should not bring down our relative to manage it. And on the flip side, also the ad kan, and until this case of our Mishnah, loikam Rabbanan Rabbanan do not say over here ela mishu they shouldn't touch the base ela mishu ela only. Ikra Kana, either like Rav Kana's reason, Ikra Nachman bar Yitzchak, or like Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak's reason. Either you shouldn't touch it because of the merits of the Kav Shaloi, or because maybe the Baal Bayis made them Truma Meisim. But anyway, you shouldn't touch it for a certain reason. Avol Hasam, but over there in the case of the relative in the hostage's properties, Hasam over there, Hachinami, so also the moridim, that you should bring down a relative. So what we're left with is, unnecessarily, can we compare the ideas and the opinion of Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon ben Gmaliel to the case of a hostage and a relative in his fields. So 1 second. So the Gemara continues. Now we move on to Chilek Beis. The Gemara says, 1 second, okay, fine. So what do I understand right now? That Tanakama says by the fruits that you shouldn't touch it for a specific reason, and Rabbi Shimon ben Gmaliel holds that you should sell it for a specific reason. So what am I to understand? That these didn't have a svara for itself, and this case has a svara for itself. This has a reasoning for itself, and this has a reasoning for itself. Yeah, that's what I'm coming to conclude. Frag the Gemara, 1 second. We learned that Shmuel said, Rabbi Yaakov said in the name of Shmuel that the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon ben Gmaliel. And Shmuel also said that in the case of nechsei shavui, the belongings of a hostage, you should go down. The relative should go down. So we see that there's a correlation over here, that Shmuel holds that halacha is like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, and he also holds that you should go down to the field. So maybe there is one svara, not two separate svaras. Maybe there is one common svara between the two cases that you should intervene, because we see that Shmuel says the two. Maybe if Amorida says these two things, maybe there's a connection, and maybe there's actually one svara behind it that you should intervene. And for the Gemara, no. Even so, even Shmuel, it's because of two separate svaras. It's not because of one svara. He doesn't hold that the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel and that you should go down because of one svara. Rather, even him, he holds it because of two separate svaras, two separate reasonings. Says the Gemara, I'll actually bring you a raya. It actually makes sense. It actually makes sense that it's because of two different reasons. Why? Because we find that Rav Nachman says that the halacha is like Chachamim in our Mishnah, as we learned in Sugya Chav. Okay? Rav Nachman says, Rav in the name of Rav Nachman, right? If you remember. Rav Nachman says the halacha is like Chachamim, and Rav Nachman says you should go down to the field. So we see that Rav Nachman holds two separate, totally separate reasonings, seemingly, right? You should not touch the peiros, and that you should go down to the field. So we see it must be that there are two separate svaras for the two cases. There are two totally separate reasonings. And with that we conclude Sugya Chaf Aleph. Very simple and very straightforward. Let's look at it inside. Let's learn the Gemara inside. Here we go. We're holding around the wide lines. Usually, for most Gemaras, it's the last narrow line. Lememra. Lememra is a keyword of a Havamina. The Gemara is going to try to suggest. Lememra, we should say, that there are two reasonings. I'm realizing that we didn't do the Rashis on Chelik Aleph, so we'll do all the Rashis at the end of Chelik Beis. Lememra, we should say that that there are two reasonings for the case of our Mishnah of the fruits and the case of the hostage going into the relative going down to the properties of the hostage. We should say that there's two different reasonings for the two different things. For the Gemara on that, Omar Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, halacha Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, the halacha is like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Omar Shmuel, and Shmuel said, mורידים קרוב לנכסי שבוי, that we bring down a relative to the belongings of a hostage. Lav, doesn't it mean mishum the chataimu, because it's one reasoning. And for the Gemara pushes that away and says, Loi, no. Today, time I know there are two different reasons. Even Shmuel, who holds of both ideas, even him, it's because of two different reasons. It's not because of one common reasoning. And hachinam mistabra. So also mistabra. It's logical. It makes sense to say. This is a keyword of a raya, of a proof. Hachinam mistabra. So also makes sense to say. The Omar Rava, Omar Rav Nachman, because Rava said in the name of Rav Nachman, halacha kedire chachamim, that the halacha is like chachamim in our Mishnah, that you should not touch the fruits. And nonetheless, the Omar Rav Nachman, and Rav Nachman also said, mורידים קרוב לנכסי שבוי, that we bring down a relative to the belongings of the hostage. Ella, rather, Shema Mino, we learned from here. Today, time you knew that, you see, you could hold different perspectives in the two different cases. Must be that there are two different reasonings here in the two different cases. Shema Mina, the Gemara concludes with a proof that we learned from here. This is a valid proof that there are two separate reasonings. Let's learn Rashi. We missed last Sugya's Rashi, so we're going to go back a little bit to Rashi to Ramaskel. Midrabban Shimon ben Gamliel, Midrabban Shimon nishma mורידים קרוב. From the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, it sounds like that we do bring down a relative. What kind of relative, says Rashi? Haroi linash, one who is worthy of inheriting. The closest relative to this person, who is actually, if this person doesn't come back alive, then he's actually going to inherit it. And it comes out that this relative is potentially enhancing and developing a field that maybe his. Maybe he eventually is, because he's going to inherit it. Lנכסי שבוי, next Rashi. לנכסי שבוי, in the belongings of a captive. לקרקעי שבוי, to the lands of a captive. לאויבדם, to work on them, ולשמם, and to guard them. Actually, until the owners come back. For the time being, ולקמון, and later in the Gemara, the next sugya, pligi ba'amiron, the Amiron argue about this case. Ad kan loikam Rabbi Shimon hacha, until here, Rabbi Shimon does not say over here, the moikran, that you should sell them. Till now, the Rabbi Shimon doesn't say that you should sell the fruits. Ela mishum de kakali karna. Only because he only says you should sell it because the actual cat and actual principle is getting ruined. In yenichem sham, if you leave them over there, avol gabe karkois uchramim, but regarding lands and vineyards, karkois lands uchramim and vineyards, they're not actually getting destroyed. Even though that they're getting a little bit destroyed, like kalya karna, the principle itself is not getting destroyed. Either Rav Kana, either like Rav Kana, which Rav Kana, what are we talking about? The Amar Le'el, because we said earlier, that a person wants his own kav. Either Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, either like Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, the Amar that he says, Shema Son Truma Meiser, maybe the owner made them Truma Meiser. Next part of the Gemara, the final Chelik base of the Gemara. The today time in Inu, let's try to say, so we see from here that there are two reasonings. Two reasonings for what? Masnisin, the Mishnah, the Nechsei Shavim, and the case of the belongings of a captive. These two cases have two separate reasonings. The Ika, and there are people. The Isle, that there is to them, meaning that they hold. There are people who hold. Moichin Peiris Avodim, that you sell fruits that are getting destroyed. The Lesle, and they do not hold, meaning the Lesle, and there isn't to them, meaning and they do not hold Moridim, that we bring down a relative. And with that we conclude our Sugya. Hatzlacha Rabbo Muflaga. Learn Torah, make sure to know the Gemara well, make sure to add in any mitzvah possible, and to bring Mashiach now, especially for the safety of our brethren in Eretz Yisrael and all over the world. Which Mashiach take it from now.